my dollars make it hurt.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm joined by Wade Childs. Wade, it's great to have you back on, dude. How you doing?
Oh, good to be back. Good to be back. It's season's winding down, and I actually slept in this weekend, so I feel just different.
Yeah. So we're recording this right now. It's on the eve of December 7th. How much time is left for you for this hunting season?
So I have 2 Michigan buck tags still. I don't know if I'll get back in a tree in Michigan, possibly one time. I've got a good buddy, Mike, that likes to take me up to his beautiful piece of property up in Hart area, like northwest kind of Michigan area. So I might go up there with him once. Beyond that, I've got some work trips coming up here the next 2 weeks. I'll be in Mexico for 9 days for one of them, and opposite side of the state for a week. And so getting back in the tree in Michigan is going to be tough. I do have something lined up to go to northern Missouri here right around the New Year's. So I should still, be amongst them, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah,
We'll see.
That's exciting. Well, dude, when you think about all the craziness that we do as far as getting ready for the rut, like early season, we're doing these early season tactics, being close to bedding, where's food at, and then the rut hits, and then it's like friggin' chaos and just bananas, like batshit crazy, everything's going around, and then like you said, you start getting tired, you start working a little bit more, you got trips, you got doing this, and then the late season rolls around, and then it's like, where's the food? So what buck is survived? What buck still has somewhat a majority of his headgear left? Or at that point, like it might be no patrol. Like, let's get some more meat down and just have some fun, just whacking and stacking and doing all that type of stuff. So yeah, it's exciting to see, what still is ahead.
Oh yeah. Yep. I'm excited to get out to Missouri. It's been 2 years, I think, since I've hunted out there, and I got a couple good buddies that like to come up here and turkey hunt. And they've been begging me to come out and hunt deer with them for the last couple of years. And I think I'm finally going to take them up on it this year. I was going to go in September, ended up working all of September in Mexico again. So we pushed it back to the new year, assuming they had bucks left over. They've got bucks left over. They have an incredible amount of deer, an incredible amount of ground that they get access to. So I think it's going to be a go.
Yeah, heck yeah, man. Well, before we dive deep into having a hunting conversation and whatever else kind of gets brought up, dude, I have to know. I know you're a Lions fan. How fired up are you right now about their season at the time of this recording?
It's been rough the last 2 weeks. We dropped that Thanksgiving game to the Packers, and then we snuck by the Saints this last week. I did start the season in Kansas City at Arrowhead, had one of the most amazing times just, being out there with the fans, looking like an idiot wearing a Barry Sanders bro tank. They all invited us into their tailgates, gave us free beers, burgers, hot dogs. It was just a great time, great atmosphere. Recommend Arrowhead to anybody, but it's weird to be not only excited about the Lions this late in the year and confident in the Lions this late in the year, but somehow, some way, they are my only sports hope for all of my Detroit teams, my Michigan State teams. They all suck, but we got the Lions.
Yeah, I was going to say, because you're Michigan State, so I mean, that other team up there, they're just kind of.
I hate that team.
Yeah,
yep.
That's funny. Yeah,
I'm going to be a big Alabama fan here coming up soon. So
I know.
Sorry, friends.
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you what, man. As long as Goff doesn't turn the ball over, I mean, you got a stout defense. You got some playmakers on offense, and you guys are built. And I feel like your schedule plays into your favor a little bit. I mean, obviously, I grew up in Northeast PA. I'm a diehard Eagles fan, and I always felt like this year so far we haven't played to our ability, and they kept saying that, and I really don't like. People don't understand how critical certain coaching really plays a role, even at that level. Like, obviously the Eagles lost both of their offensive and defensive coordinators, and obviously the head coach plays a little bit of of what kind of schemes and type of play calling a little bit goes into your game plan each week. But holy heck, man, it's been frustrating for me. Like my wife's like, okay, what piece of house are you going to break in downstairs in your basement this weekend? And it was funny because this past, getting fired up for that Niners game, I was like, oh man, it's just going to be a good game. I like, the
Yep.
animosity's there, and like, let's see what happens. And then like leading into it, one of my students was like, Dins, I don't know, man. Like your defense is going to be, I think, beat for this game. I got to thinking, I was like, hey man, you never know. And he goes, Dins, that's 3 games in 13 days. And they're, think back to who they were playing the last couple weeks and the big overtime win against the Bills. Man, I don't know. I think the Niners got them this week. He goes, and they come off that extra day off from Thursday, playing on the Thursday night game. I was like, dude, you
Yep.
just ruined my weekend.
Yeah,
And they
Niners
did it.
look
And then,
good. Yeah.
yeah, and exactly what he said to me is exactly what ended up happening. It was, and I honestly, I was frustrated during the game, and then once they started blowing it out, I just like shut it off. I was like, Nora, let's do something, just to get my mind off. And me and my daughter were doing some things, but yeah, I'm pumped for you though. That like I like seeing like a team like the Lions, and I like hell, even like the Dolphins playing well, just
Yeah.
because they're storied franchises, and it's been a while
Yep.
for the Dolphins, and obviously you're probably like, man, it's been forever for the Lions. And
So
you know,
they've won one playoff game my entire life, and I was 3 years old,
yeah,
1991. So
yeah,
to have this squad and Goff playing like he's been playing, St. Brown is a dog, Sam Laporta, like come on,
yeah, yeah,
it's a fun team to watch for sure. We just hopefully our defense steps up, and just the offense keeps rolling like they've been rolling. It's fun.
yeah.
It's a new territory for a lot of us up here. So.
Oh man, well, I'll be rooting until they play the Eagles maybe this year.
Yeah, yeah. I hope that you guys get to experience a little bit of Lions disappointment, to be honest
Yeah,
with you.
yeah.
So,
Well, so obviously, as you can tell, everybody listening, obviously Wade's from Michigan. He's been on the podcast before, and good mutual friend of ours together is Andrew Blair, and he works for Tethered and everything like that along those lines. And last time he was on the podcast, man, Wade, you and I got along extremely well. I couldn't wait to see what the season kind of was going to tell for you and what you're going to get into. And I couldn't wait to catch up because, obviously these podcasts sometimes are the one times where, we might keep in touch through social media and through a message here and there over the summer and early fall and whatnot. But then like when we have this hour, 20 minutes to sit down and catch up, man, I look forward to these times. And this is why I enjoy doing this. And so I'm pumped to get into this one with you, dude.
oh yeah, yeah, me too. I've been looking forward to a little recap and getting back into the meat and potatoes of everything for sure.
Yeah. So what did what kind of hunting stuff did you get into this past season as far as traveling? Because I know, like, when we talked last time, you do a good bit of traveling as far as hunting goes, and that even dates back going into some spring turkey hunts and all that type of stuff. So what did you get into, man?
Um, yeah, so this year was pretty crazy as far as like a personal level and a hunting level. Actually, kind of a lot of changes in my life. I moved out, bought a house, closed on it October 7th, I believe. I spent, like I said, almost all of September in Mexico for work. The preseason, the summer shooting, the scout, like all that, just it was non-existent for me this
Out the
year.
door. Yeah.
Yeah, I was able to make it to Illinois, I think one time on the way home from Missouri from like a golf tournament. I stopped in and I refreshed cameras, and like that was my summer scouting. I literally spent one day in Illinois, and beyond that, I think I shot my bow from July to deer season maybe 4 times. And
Yeah.
that's disgusting for me to even think about. And it cost me a deer this year. I mean, it cost me a deer opening morning in Michigan, a great buck. I had, one of the worst shooting performances of my career this year. It was rough. I did get some redemption. I'm sure we'll get into that later. I did hunt Illinois. I started in Kentucky with my best friend Ryan. He was chasing a really special deer. You know a little bit
Yep.
about that. I think you might have some more
Yep.
information on an upcoming podcast with that. Just a just you guys need to listen to the story. It's worth it. I don't want to spoil it here. Um, I spent a couple days opening weekend down there in Kentucky with him, getting full of chiggers and ticks, and it was a good time. Um, Left there, went to Mexico, came back, hunted in Michigan, went to Illinois for a week or 4 or 5 days, came back, hunted in Michigan again, and then right about the time I was able to get possession of this house that I'm in, I moved all my stuff here, and then right after that, it was like 2.5 weeks of balls to the wall, Illinois, Indiana, Tennessee, just grinding.
Yeah.
Having to be some places doing some work with some work with tethered, and then hunting my own stuff, doing the tethered thing, and yeah, it wore me out, and I was really close to throwing in the towel on the second to last day of the strip, but thank God I didn't. I'm sure we'll get to that part. So
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I mean, take the shooting aspect out and like how, how you said that cost you, because that will kind of be like a part two to this one. You know, man, I can't recall. I'm having a brain fart from our last like podcast that we did. We talked about like what kind of postseason, quote unquote, and you don't do too much, right?
no, I've never really done a whole lot of preseason scouting.
Yeah.
I'll maps and some e-scouting and stuff, but as far as boots on the ground, it's never really been my thing, solely because the availability of time. I mean,
Yeah.
with my career, I'm a weekend warrior, unfortunately. I work a lot and I travel a lot, so you know you travel. I think I looked at my hotel rewards today because I just booked 2 trips. I think I have 65 days in a hotel this year.
Yeah.
So just doing that, just IHG hotels, even, so that's not even like some of the Vegas trips I had to do for work. So anyway, I spent a lot of time in a hotel room. So to be home and still be present or still get the things I need to get done around home, it's tough to get that summer scouting in elsewhere, where I actually want to be outside of, the state of Michigan.
Right.
So yeah, my summer prep is traditionally shooting my bow. That's what it is. I get the saddle gear ready, and then I get my mind right. I get the bow ready, and that's about the extent of it.
Yeah, and I'll even kind of jump in and talk about this just because I know it might sound like contradicting to like what I did this past year. Like I did do a little bit more scouting, but I did more scouting in the spring, like turkey hunting and a couple days after work here and there. But in all reality, a lot of it was, I was doing things like for tethered and creating content and doing those things. And so it like forced me to get out in the woods a little bit more than what I was in the past, but I also had the time because I wasn't coaching where this past spring was that first time not doing that. But man, even right now, like this postseason of Pennsylvania, quote unquote postseason, because I filled a buck tag early October. I like you, man. I had some other things going on. I got some personal things happening in my life. I got baby number 2 coming. That was a blessing, as my wife and I like to call it, instead of a whoopsie.
Yep.
Because I mean, to be frank, we didn't know. We were pretty much told 4 or 5 years ago that it probably wasn't in our cards, and so we're like, okay, like cool, let it
Yep.
rip. And then this past, I get done wrapped up with 2 turkeys and done, and yeah, I guess apparently I planted another turkey in there. So,
There you
so
go.
but long story short, to go back, like I said, I don't want to sound like I'm contradicting myself, but what I want people to know is if you are busy, if you don't do scouting, it's okay, because Wade is one of those individuals where, you don't have a social media presence where you're on YouTube, you're making money, you're doing all this other type of stuff. But dude, you kill friggin' great deer, it seems like, year after year, or at least you have opportunities to. And and I want people to know that it doesn't matter, right? As long as you learn from your experiences in the past of maybe mistakes or successes, apply that to the next following year and get better and digest some things and talking to people and doing all that. Because man, you could have success even if you're like putting forth that effort by just shooting your bow, right? And getting out there and telling you what the wood tells you. Like, I think that's really important for people to know.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. A lot of people that I work with, I'm around every day. They're busy too. They've got families. They've got they've got work obligations, and yeah, they just don't. They want to do it. They don't have the time, and especially guys here, the guys that do know that travel, it's hard to get away. It's hard to go spend multiple weekends out of state. Chasing deer. Obviously, we both know some guys that do that, but to do it in an off season and invest that the mileage, the gas money, the time, just the time away when you should be home working on your house or mowing your lawn or spending that family time, whatever it may be for you, it's not that easy to do. So if you can spend wake up in the morning, spend 30 minutes in your backyard shooting your bow, that's going to hone a skill for you come fall that it's irreplaceable for sure.
Yeah. So then how did that kind of bite you in the ass a little bit this year?
Well, anybody that knows me knows I've always, suffered from a little bit of target panic. It's something I've never really been able to break. I'm kind of a nutcase when it comes to that, and the only way I've really been able to get through it is repetitive shooting, like a lot. Like I'll shoot, 5-6 days a week every week from May till deer season, okay. And then I during the week, especially when I'm not like on an out of state trip, I'll come home that twilight, at least try to rip 2, 4, 6, some small amount of arrows before it gets dark out. And so this year it started out like even just, having the muscle strength in your shoulders and your back that I just didn't maintain this year just because of traveling and, living in Grand Rapids with one of my best friends. Like you can't shoot a bow in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Like just having all that going on. It just made things different. And October 1st, I was in a tree in southern Michigan. A doe came in. I was like, I'm gonna get the bow rolling. I'm gonna shoot this doe. It's gonna be easy. It's gonna be awesome. I drew back on her. She was 20 yards, one step away from getting shot. She turned and wheeled out, ran through the hedgerow as I swung my bow. I mean, peripherals, one of those like, oh, holy shit, swing back to the same shooting hole, and there's a 150-inch deer standing there.
Whoa.
And I didn't know he was there. I didn't know he was even a deer that existed. Like he was just a hammer of a whitetail. And he stood there and stood there and stood there, and he was on my boot tracks and, doing the old nose up, look up, staring at the doe, trying to put all the puzzle pieces together. You could see the wheels churning in his head. And, he gave me one quick shot opportunity, and I shot right underneath him. I mean, 20 yards at a 200 and whatever pound whitetail. Just that's disgusting. And I mean, it was kind of one of those things where I literally got home from Mexico, and like 2 days later, I was in a tree. So like I had zero prep time. So it was just kind of like, it's deer season. I'm going hunting. Let's just go be in the woods. So it was an easy one to shake off. Like whatever, it sucks. But like, how fortunate was I to pick a spot, and just knowing some history of the land and kind of knowing what they would do. I put some puzzle pieces together as I walked in the dark that, hey, there's a little pocket of green beans right here. These oak trees look like they're actively dropping acorns, coupled with these green beans on the north side of this hedgerow, wind, blah, blah, blah. I picked a tree out, climbed up it, and had an opportunity. So just being like still in the mental game in that aspect was something good I could take away from it. The shooting aspect, the muscle memory, that was an easy pill to swallow. So I had justification for missing that deer. Obviously, you don't ever want to do that, but yeah, it was an easier one to swallow. So I did. Fast forwarded a few weeks, went to Illinois, struggled early season really, really bad. It was just a slow, hot, kind of like we had picked up a new lease down there. It was kind of like let's go for the weekend, check the new lease out. We hadn't even put boots on the ground on it yet. Never saw it from the road, nothing. So that was kind of the reasoning for going down there at the time. Came back to Michigan, had a really, really good day of hunting deer and seeing deer up at this northern Michigan property with my buddy. And I slid into the timber on what I assumed was probably the best bedding on the farm. Didn't really know. Hadn't ever really been in this section of it before. Kind of could tell from Onyx and reading maps, there was some good transition lines with timber edges and the way the terrain laid out. And I snuck in there, found some hot sign. 140-inch deer comes walking at me through the timber before I even got up in a tree. Ended up, long story short, I was on my knees, stripping my backpack off, stripping, my quiver off my bow, trying to get an arrow knocked. Leaned into this tree I was hiding behind, knocked like a 12-foot tall branch out of this tree. I caught it just as it hit the ground, but it was like so long, I wasn't strong enough to hold it. Deer locks up, and I just like, only thing I think of to do was he was looking back to see what that was, and I just went, "Bleh,"
Yeah.
he turns and faces at me and just comes right back over top of me. And I was like, holy shit, that was the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
And he marches right at me 40 yards, stands there broadside. I had the perfect shooting window, and I was uphill to him. Everything was just money, on my knees. Everything was comfortable. I knew the shot was coming. I didn't have to rush it. And just another situation, I shot him square in the shoulder. So
Oh.
the whole shooting aspect of Michigan was rough, and it even got worse from there. I hate to say it, but yeah, it was the worst. It was the worst performance of my life for sure this year in the Whitetail Woods.
So,
As
but you
far,
did like you said though, man, you did redeem yourself.
yep,
So how just because, man, dude, I've been there, and
yep,
you're not the only one. I know I'm not the only one. There are lots of people out there that have those opportunities, right? And where it's just like, okay, it goes wrong, and you've been doing
mm-hmm,
this for a long time, and like I said earlier, you've been successful too for a very long time. You get over it. It's like a weird thing, because I'm still haunted, right? There's still times where I think, close my eyes, I think of that one specific hunt, that one specific buck, and I could see
mm-hmm.
the mishap, right? And it eats at you. But I mean, crap it. But in order to get over it, you just got to get back out there, right? You just got to trust in yourself and your ability, and it gets better. And for you, where did that redemption happen? And where did how did you get over that? Like, how did you get over that hump?
So from that point, fast forward, I think 5-6 days after that Michigan hunt, and my whatever this rutcation, whatever stupid term you want to call it,
Yeah.
I left work like 2 hours early because I was like, I'm not being successful here. I am just going to leave and just get to Illinois. So I jumped in my truck and I headed. It's like about a 6-hour drive, 5.5, 6-hour drive from where I was working. I got about halfway across Illinois, south of Chicago somewhere. It's like, I pull up my phone, check out the weather. I wasn't going to hunt that evening because it was supposed to be warm out and there was some rain coming in. I checked the weather, and like, man, in the last like 90 minutes of daylight, it was like a 15-degree temperature swing. And like the rain was just clearing. I was like, that changed from, the night before when I had looked at it.
Yeah.
So I kind of hit the little pedal on the right a little bit harder than I should have. And I'm, flying across Illinois to get there. I literally just drove out to the middle of the field, and I'm stripping off my work clothes and putting camo on. Ran out to a tree across this giant picked cornfield. It had been picked in between the two trips I made. And we had a picture of a pretty good deer the night before in daylight in this one cove of this field. And so I elected, obviously, to sit that. It was similar conditions. The wind made sense to where, anything that was mature in this bottom would come up out of it. And I was sitting the opposite side of the cove to where I had still the wind advantage. I was sitting there watching, a nice 3 or 4-year-old 10-point, wasn't really sure what he was. The oldest deer on the farm that we know about or knew about comes walking right up out of that bottom, like I said. Walks right up, into the pit cornfield. He's got his face smashed into an ear of corn. It's everything you could want. This is October 27th. I mean, the deer is fully, as big as a whitetail could get. He's not rutted out. He's just a horse. And he gives me a 35-yard shot after, drawing back on him a couple of times. He never turned. He finally gave me this opportunity. I slid the bow back. Didn't have to grunt stop him. He was just, here's your shot. Just take it. And I shot and I hit him high in the shoulder. And I still thought I was going to kill him. He nose down, that bulldozer type of run, hit the timber, turned straight downhill, and disappeared. So my two good buddies, Ryan and Tyler, they were coming into town that evening, and I was just ahead of them a few hours. So I went down to the local bar. I had dinner. I had a couple bush lights to calm the nerves. Um, and I walk out just about the time they're getting back into town, and it's just ripping rain. Like I didn't know was coming. Whatever. I'm like, if he's dead, he's dead. If he's not, he's not. What situation. We looked, pretty much all the next day. Obviously, never found him. So now I'm 0 for 3, and here we are. It's still October. Less than a month. I'm 0 for 3 on like 140 and bigger deer. And this deer was kind of that 150-inch type of typical 10 point with no trash, but just a awesome
Beautiful.
whitetail. Yeah. So I told Tyler he's he's a little younger in his hunting career, and he's just trying to better himself every time he goes. This was his first real time being in a camp with me and Ryan. And so he was really excited, and I was excited for him. I'm like, dude, I just want to go sit with you and have some fun. Like this sucks. I just need to change something.
Yeah.
And so he had saw a pretty good deer that morning. Him and I made a move on that deer and what we thought. And I had, it's this, neither of us had been in this timber to this part of it. We slid up in there, picked the tree out, and it wasn't 30 minutes later, he slipped an arrow right through the center of that deer. And it was like one of the highlights of the season for sure to watch Tyler shoot his biggest buck. And, it kind of, I got some wind back in the sails. Like, okay,
Yeah.
this is doable. So we took the next day off, getting Tyler's deer out, cutting him up, caping him out, getting him ready to transport out of the state. He had to work. I think he shot up on a Saturday. We did all that work on a Sunday. He had to actually be at work on Monday. So he left camp. Ryan and I went back out the next morning. I think it would have been November 1st. And I saw a giant that morning. I was like, okay, it's on again. We got another one chase. And him and I made a move on him that evening. Ryan had him at full draw, one step away, wind swirl situation, the classic, right? Deer kind of gets out of there, doesn't bust. Moved again on him in the morning. I had him at 40 the next morning. Never got a shot off. He was in some brush, and then he worked away from me, jumped the fence, and worked away from me. Once he got up to about 100, I rattled at him, turned him around. He was coming right back into the bottom I was in. And just as he was it's like do or die as he makes that turn to make that last approach, some doe spilled over the ridge, and he did the classic, deer growl, takes off up the hill after him. And that it's 10:30, 11 o'clock at this point, and it's late. So I know once he leaves these does, I watched him bump the does, scent check them, knew they weren't ready, left up the ridge by himself. So now with what the wind was doing, dumping over the top of that ridge, the way that ridge made this horseshoe at the top of it, everything made sense to me. That deer's going up to the top of that. It's 11 o'clock. He's going to lay down. The wind was supposed to turn 90 degrees that evening. I'm like, there is nothing about this deer that's not going to walk back down this ridge tonight. So I slid back into that spot that evening. I made an adjustment about 75 yards. And sure enough, 3:30 early, sunshine beaming on him. The first thing I see is that left side. I can see his 12-inch G2 and a 6-inch drop tine coming down the hill, and I'm just like, oh God, it's one of the, like you said, it's one of those things you remember forever. And just watching the sunshine beat off that deer's antler was just it was incredible. Right. So he comes down the hill, gives me a shot. Is a little over 40, closer to 50. I had ranged some holes. I had him at I knew he wasn't 50, but I knew he was over 40. So I shot him for that. He spun, I had to hard stop him in the timber because it was the only shooting lane I had. And it was probably too far of a shot to take, but how do you, you're doing these 6-hour trips, it gets the best of you. And I shot. He spun really, really hard on the shot because I had to hard stop him, and I hit him low. I don't really know where I hit him. And it all happened so fast. It was I was in a bunch of maples and the sun was shining. I was shooting a yellow arrow. The the nocturnal went off, but it was too bright out to matter. And as that arrow flashes through the sunshine and the shade, it just kind of in a flurry of the deer turning. Unfortunately, I don't really know where I hit him, and which is really uncommon for me because I try to really, really pay attention to that. But um, we ended up tracking him the next morning. Ryan and I took him 1,650 yards before he laid down the first time.
Wow.
So he went almost 3/4 of a mile without bedding. Kind of at that point, we knew like, okay, this deer's not going to die. He's just muscle hit and
Yeah.
probably low leg or something that he just I don't know. And it's not like me to feel like I don't know what's going on in the timber, and this was like a new experience that I had to learn from, and another pill to swallow. And
Yeah.
I had to leave that day. I'm calling Rob Mendoza with Tethered, like, hey man, I'm going to be late. Like, I have to find this deer. And obviously, Rob's being the awesome dude that he is like, yeah, get your deer. Worry about being here later. So, we pretty well exhausted all the efforts on him. Left Illinois, slightly before dark, and drove to Tennessee. And so, went and did the tether thing. Met some great people doing that. Got the wind back in my sails. Actually, was successful. So, I'm in. I'm out of state. I can't really say where we were at yet. Phone goes off like right as I'm falling asleep. Text cam notification. I open it up. There is the big heavy 10 point that I hit October 27th, standing there, just perfect as can be. Right, he
Wow.
looks completely healthy, and this is like November. Ooh, I'd say like 7th, I think is
Okay.
when it was.
Mm-hmm.
Cold front was coming back into Illinois, the 8th or the 9th. I told the guys, I'm like, hey, I gotta go. Like, I gotta go try to get this deer killed because he's got a hole through him, and I just have to. You know how it is.
Yep.
Everybody, it was awesome. Wish me luck, and I got out of there and drove back to Illinois. I was hunting that deer. Saw another one of our big deer. Um, saw several bucks that first morning, and then it kind of warmed up and got slow for a few days. Another buddy showed up to town. He ended up killing a 4-year-old deer, 4 or 5-year-old deer. It was a really nice wide, heavy buck that we knew about. He was, lucky enough to get an arrow through him, and I'm sitting in my truck trying to game plan where I'm going to hunt that evening. Right about the time he shot him, I was, this is like the lowest of lows. I've messed up 4 opportunities. I'm ready to go home, throw the towel in. Like,
Yeah.
it's the last day is this. I have to work on Monday, and this is Saturday afternoon. So Brandon texts me. He's like, I just shot that wide 8. I'm like, okay, that's awesome. This is going to be fun. Let's have some fun in Illinois finally. Besides Tyler, and so I'm like, I'll obviously going to stay. I'm going to help him. We go through all the rigmarole of what's going on with his deer. We determine, best bet, best case scenario. Let's just leave him. We'll find him in the morning. Him and I go in the morning, found the arrow, found some good blood. Fortunately, kind of just walked right to the deer, about 150 yards, celebrating, standing over top of the deer, high fiving. We did all the pictures, and I hear a deer coming, and here he is. He's got his bow, because we took his bow in when he shot his buck. I hear this deer coming. I'm like, hey, toss me your bow. Just, whatever reason happens. And I'm standing there with Brandon's bow, and it's the same bow I shoot. So,
Yeah.
everything's familiar. Um, Little buck comes over the ridge. And I'm like, oh man, if that would have been a big deer, that would have been incredible.
Yeah. Right.
So he gets on FaceTime. He's like, hey, I have to call my wife. This is our tradition. I'm going to FaceTime my wife. He's on FaceTime with his wife. I'm sitting 15 feet up the hill, just looking at the deer. We're just, being in the timber with this old buck. So all of a sudden we kind of just look at each other and we hear a deer walking at the same time. And he puts his finger to his mouth, tell his wife to be quiet. And she, bless her heart, I've never even met her before, but she got the memo and she shut right up on the phone. And I just knocked an arrow on his bow, stood up, turned around, and it wasn't 10 seconds. And here comes main beams over top of the hill. And he's like under 20 and he's just staring down at us. I drew his bow back and got the pin on this deer, and I was able to get an arrow in him, killed him right there. And it was the buck I hit October 27th. And
No
I
way.
actually shot him, with Brandon's bow. And it was one of those situations like we have these two old deer, you know, under, 20 yards apart. And it was just like the most surreal, amazing, awesome moment just to have such a crazy roller coaster of a season end like that. Like it
Yeah.
was like it should like that's not how it's supposed to go,
No, no
you know.
way. No
And
way. I mean, the hell to even use your buddy's bow, like that's just
yeah,
crazy.
it's just like, you know, you're not going to do that with somebody else's bow on anything other than a shot like that.
Right.
And the fact that this deer was stomping at like 9:30 in the morning, and I think it was 15 days after I shot him, just walking, right? That dumb rut crazy.
Yep.
And we have pictures of this deer from 2019. So killed him in 23. So at least 4 years of pictures of this deer. And in 2019, there's no way he was like younger than probably 3, I would guess. So
Mhm.
he could have been anywhere between 7, 8, 9. You don't know.
Right.
This deer's really taught me that, like, man, unless you know, you don't know.
Yeah.
Like obviously followed that deer in Kentucky with Ryan. We had a pretty good idea what that deer was. For a deer to show up and you think that you know how old he is, and I'm really becoming a non-believer in that. Like
Yeah.
he's either mature or he's not, and that's about the extent of the knowledge. It was wild, man. It was just a crazy experience, and that one deer, just taught me a lot. It really did, and to have a perfect broadhead hole through both shoulder blades for
Yeah.
15 days and it was still acting like a buck. It was impressive.
That's crazy, man. I want to even go back to because there was a time where you said that when you drew back on that one buck when he gave you that opportunity like a couple times on him, right? On that
Yep,
and that was that deer, right?
that was that same deer. Yeah,
Yeah.
yep,
Man, dude, I give you credit because you said you drew back a couple times before you let an arrow fly. Because there's times where people that really struggle, no matter what, they can't let down
yep,
in those times. So like that in itself is to me, right? Because I've been there. I've been in those situations where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm drawn back on a deer, like, oh, I don't have that shot opportunity. And it's like, think and
yep,
there goes an arrow into like ricocheting off of trees. Like I'm talking a couple
yep,
like years ago and stuff. And it's like, damn it, what'd you do? And then you got to collect yourself all over again. And hopefully that deer comes in a little bit closer because it's like, what the hell just happened? Like,
yep.
why is there squirrels going nuts, like jumping around the trees and stuff? But so like one that and then man, I just give you a lot of credit because like you said, I know you were down and I know you're ready to throw in the towel, but I think that's also critical to show why it's important, like not necessarily to go hunt with other people, right? I'm not saying that it's like, hey, like let's go hunt in the same tree. Like I'm not saying that, but like why it's really important to have that camaraderie, like why it's important to have a close group of friends where you could bounce your emotions and your feelings and your hunting, struggle off of each other and get picked back up. And I love the fact that like how you said you got more win in your sails when your friends killed, right? And I love to hear that because that is so important. And I it's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, yeah. There's just like such a strange dichotomy with deer hunting. It's like everybody, everywhere is like it's like a really really selfish sport, and
Yeah.
people are afraid to talk about it with other people and share the just like you said the camaraderie and the times and camp and that's just not me. I'm doing
Yeah.
it because it's supposed to be fun, and you do. There are times where you sit around like when I was in my truck, like contemplating driving back to Michigan, like why are we doing this? This isn't fun. And I don't think I have it in me that if I didn't do this with other people, this group of friends that I have, across Kentucky, Michigan, Missouri, if I didn't do it with these guys, like I don't see the joy of hunting. And I think that's lost a lot of times in social media, whatever parts play roles into this. It's why aren't we out there having fun, guys? You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so yeah, I agree. Being able to share success with other people, it's awesome.
Yeah,
So
and your early season Michigan situation where you shot and had that opportunity early, like you said, like that opening day, that
yep,
reminded me a lot where like you beat yourself up for a little bit, but then you got over it, right? Like you're like, hey, that's
yep,
a win. Like I put two and two together with the beans and the acorns dropping and the fresh oaks and like all that type of stuff. And hey, you got in the kitchen that early on to see that caliber of deer. That
yep,
is really a big win, right? Like, so if you're able to dissect that and come away with that, man, there's nothing better. And it really reminded me of my situation this past year with my Maryland hunt, because that was to the T, man. I've never been to this area. I went with a friend and we hunted 2 days, right? And we kind of bounced around. Like you have to sign, like you have to put your name into certain locations because they only allow 12 hunters on this piece all day for
yep,
whatever for that specific day. And so we would go and we will like I saw a couple deer, and then we're like, man, I don't know, like it's not they didn't plant, they planted corn. You know what I mean? It was just so hard, and I was like, what do you want to do? Like, do you want to move? Do you want to go to a different spot? He's like, well, let's travel up more north, and we went to a whole different spot, and I saw the way the map laid out, and I was like, I want to go here. This reminds me of home, and if it looks like home, I'll find something. And he's like, okay, I'm going to go way out here. I'm going to go down to this little corner pocket of the corn stuff. And I was like, okay, like have fun. Like, I'm going to go
yep.
I went to like what I feel confident doing. And it like he and I actually had to hide under this monstrous tree because there was this thunderstorm. So like as soon as that was ended, we started, beating foot. So we started going down, and I started going down this little trail, and I saw him going on it was like almost like a horse trail because you're able to ride horses back here, and I see him stop, and the next thing you know, I hear going down the ridges, and I go, "What was it?" He goes, "I couldn't tell." I was like, "Okay." So I get back up on that horse trail actually with him instead of just making more ruckus. I just wanted to peek over the ridge and just see what it looked like. And
Mhm.
again, at that point in time, it's September something. It's greener than shit.
Yep.
You're like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
it just looks like greenbrier and just real nasty thick stuff. So he's walking on it, and he goes, I'm gonna get over on this field, cut across, and kind of take a shortcut. He goes, there's still lots of time left. If anything sees me, hopefully I could cut to this one edge. So he had a game plan. He goes, I don't want to mess up where you want to go. So wait, I start walking maybe 75 more yards on this trail, and all of a sudden, like I'm looking left and right. To my left, maybe going up, I don't know, 45, 50 yards, just like on a slow incline, and then it flattens out to the field. And there's nothing in this field. It's just a cut hay field, basically, or whatever.
Okay. Yep.
And then so that's to my left. And to my right, it's maybe a strip of like a 25, 30-yard bench that drops down before it drops down. And it's when I say it drops down into thick, nasty stuff, there's no way you could shoot or even like climb in it.
Okay.
So I'm walking on this little trail, and I look, I'm like, holy mother, that is a fresh scrape. And I'm talking car hood size scrape. And I'm looking around, I see this little thicket, and I see the trail that's coming out of it. And I'm looking how the wind was going and where I came from. It's like, man, if that deer would come and circle around and get on that trail, I'm looking at the trees. My first initial thought was maybe get on the like opposite side of the trail. And then I'm looking like, man, there's not a really good amount of trees. And if I get too high, I'm going to be skylighted. So there was a tree there that I saw that was it was almost like split tree. I was like, that's the tree because if it's to my strong side, I'll be behind it with the trail to my back. That scrapes a little I would say it was to about my in between 3 and 4 o'clock. And I was like, if that deer's coming in front of me, I'll have perfect wind. It's going to try to go to that scrape. Maybe I'll kill him before he gets there. Just
Yep.
hammer him. So it starts thunder and lightning again, a little bit of thunder. And I'm like, all right, if I'm going to die in this tree, at least I died doing something I love. Like, that'll be cool. Like,
Yep.
whatever. I'm not getting
Absolutely.
down. I'm not getting down. Stops raining. I'm like, okay, just be like, now I'm like, hands already on the bow. Like, I'm like, just scanning just to see because you can't hear anything. You can't see anything. And all of a sudden, I'm fixated in that thicket. And just something told me to look right. And I look right. Here comes this big 10 point fingers and all, just walking to my right. He's under foliage, and I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" Like straight 3 o'clock, dude.
Yep.
So I put my hand on my bow, and I'm like slowly moving, getting ready to like pull myself up and turn to quick get a shot. And he's just head down walking. And I just see what he was. And I was calm, cool, collected. I was just like, let's do this quick movement and get this shot. And as soon as I'm like getting ready to do that movement, he just keeps walking. There was one tree left that would put him in an opening kind of. And as soon as he came out, Wade, he just went boom, looked right up at me and just bolted out of there. I was
Yep.
like, you got to be kidding me. And then this is day 2 of the season. Like, it's not like it's
Yep.
whatever. I was like, why are you coming from this right side? My wind is blowing right to you from the get-go. I mean, I'm guessing because the way the foliage was and just the way maybe thermals were going, he didn't get it till that spot. And honestly, I probably did walk where he was. That
Yep.
like now that you think about it a little bit, but again, I beat the crap out of myself. I remember texted Jared and I was like, Jared, I just saw like, cause he was hunting Maryland at that time too, or getting ready to. I was like, dude, I just had an encounter with a Big 10. Oh man, I blew it. I was looking left when I should have been like scanning a little bit more, like just really hammering myself, texting my really good friends, Tim and Tom, Jim. And they were like, dude, you've never been there. You looked at
Yep.
a spot, you found sign, you got set up, and you had an encounter with a great deer. That would have been at that point in time. Like, if I would have killed him, he would have been probably my biggest buck.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow. And they were trying to like, and I sat back, and as I was in the tree, and I called my wife, and I was so pissed. I mean, I was so mad. She's like, okay, like I'll talk to you later. I was like, yeah, all right, like getting off the phone, like all pissed off even more. And then again, my buddies calm me down. They're like, dude, that's a win. Like that is
Yep.
a straight up win. I was like, you know what? You're right. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
My buddy
Yeah.
had my buddy had a similar situation at the end of the hunt. And on a drive home, we just kind of bullshitted about it. Like I got home at midnight, a little past midnight that night or whatever it was, because we drove straight through. He had something going on and just made it easy for us to do that. But again, we bullshitted about it the whole way home. I cheered up. I was like, okay, I got like,
Yep.
it gave me confidence to be like, I could go out of state and maybe put myself in a better position than I ever have,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, right there, your season almost started out with a bang because of what, 4 or 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You put all that work and all that time and all that thought into it, and to say it's unsuccessful because of the last 3-4 seconds, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
It's you got to take the wins. It's this bow hunting game is not easy.
Yeah.
And to have that opportunity encounter, hell yeah, it's funny listening to that story about walking between the features and picking a spot on the map that reminds you of home, how much that relates to a couple different pieces of a couple of different of the hunts that I described earlier. You're finding a big scrape, trying to pick out the tree. That's exactly what I was doing when I hit the buck in the shoulder in northern Michigan. I found a big scrape along this transition, thinking downwind side, identical to a T. And then the rain stopping, all that stuff. That's the Illinois hunt, and you just had it all together. It's crazy how similar these
Yep.
deer are, and even the 2 deer I'm describing there, they're 400 miles apart, and you're 800 miles to the east. It's crazy how it's just that's what they do.
I know it is crazy, man. I love it too, and like when you were going back earlier about having that one deer on the ground where you went, "Meh," you gave him that grunt. So my first night in Ohio, I haven't even told this story on record yet, but so my first night in Ohio, was setting I already set my second stick. I was setting my third, and already a deer is coming down this path, and it was a doe. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me! And it was a good sized doe. So at that point in time, I'm like, okay, a buck it will be behind her. Like, dude, hurry up and like screw the platform. Your stick is good. Get your bow up here and be ready. So she
What time of year was this?
at this point, this was November that early, like the 7th time frame, let's just say. Like it was around that time. So I'm like, okay, this buck is got to be nearby. So I'm getting set up. She kind of she sticks around for just maybe a minute or two, and I notice she's not really looking behind her. I'm just looking at her mannerisms. I'm like, okay, there's really no buck behind her. Finish quietly, setting up. Be like really particular about how you do this. So I did. I set up cleanly. She had no idea it was there. She starts working up a little bit to where I like going up towards the field, and at that point, I I don't know. She must have caught wind or something. Like it was a little bit swirly there, and she bounded down a little bit. I was like, okay, let's see how the rest of this evening works out because I still had I don't know. This might have been like 3 o'clock, so I still had plenty of time. And I saw two deer movement going down like the next bench below me type of ordeal. And I was the same guy who I went to Maryland with because this is his kind of property out in Ohio, and I message him. I'm like, okay, I'm going to get down at this time at dark. He's like, okay, sounds good. So he does. And I'm walking out, and I'm sure you know how Ohio is with briars and all this other type of stuff.
Yep.
I must have not clicked my arrow in all the way. And I noticed at one point I had it, and maybe went 15 yards later that I didn't have it. I was like, crap. Like,
Okay.
I got to go back. So I put my headlamp on, just because it was dark at this point in time already. And I find it. It's just sitting like on top of this little patch of grass and stuff. So I knock it back in. And at that point, I hear something. And with my headlamp weight, I look up, and about 100 yards away, I just see one set of eyes. And it's even with me at this point in time. And I'm watching it. And it gets to maybe still 90 yards away, but more 15 yards to my left at this point from where it was. And I just went, mouth called.
Yep.
All of a sudden, this deer just puts his head down, just starts walking towards me in the dark. Now, this is pure darkness at this time. I'm
Yep.
like, you got to be shitting me. Like, this is crazy.
Yep.
My buddy's about to come up from behind it over the top and come down from where he was. And this deer just continues to walk towards me. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And I can't tell what it is at this point. It gets to about 15 yards. This is the biggest deer that I have ever seen while I was in the field, quote unquote, hunting. I mean,
Yep.
just a monster. The bases to this day, I think they get bigger every time I tell this story or think about it, but it was just a huge buck. I'm just standing there with it in my headlamp going, oh my God, like just totally dumbfounded. And he looks, and he just continues to walk and goes on his way. And my buddy Albert comes back. I'm like, Albert, I just literally had the biggest buck in my life come up to about 15 yards away. He's like, oh yeah, no way. He goes, yeah, I watched him all night dogging that one doe out in that bowl. I was like, are you kidding me? He's like, yeah, he was a really good one. I was like, yeah, he was. So I was like, I want to go in there the next morning. And we ended up changing plans, and we go to this other opposite side of the property basically. And we're walking, and he goes, dude, we got to kind of go in gray light because we want to get to this other corner. We're going to have to go through the field almost. He's like, so it's a little bit of hills. Let's go in gray light. Maybe we could see if there's something. And there was this island of a 15-yard strip of timber. And we get to that spot. And I said, let's just slowly creep around before we just full bore kind of sprint to the corner where we're going to split up and go. He goes,
Yep.
okay, sounds good. Boom, here goes a buck going across. I'm like, my God, there's another big deer. Like, I mean, again, at this point now, he's the second biggest deer I've ever seen. I'm like, I love Ohio. This is
Oh yeah.
fantastic. You know what I mean? And I'm like, where's the doe though? Like he was just kind of on his own. So I go, get down. I said, you get your bow ready. I'm gonna try to call him for you. So I get my one stick out. I'm pounding it on the ground, scraping it, and doing a kind of a sequence.
Yep.
He starts coming. I'm like, dude, get freaking ready. Like, dude, you're going to shoot this guy. So he starts coming. He drops down over the hillside. He gets to a scrape. He's eating it all up and, tickling it and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden I said, stay there, stay there. I let it go, and I just give out a big snort wheeze. And you could see he was like, he wanted to come, but
Yep.
it's something, I don't know. Something made him not come, and he just kind of walked away back in that corner. I was like, "Do you want to go after him?" He's like, "No, like that's fine." And I was like, "Okay." He's like, "I'm gonna cut through here and go where I want to go." I was like, Like, I'm gonna go friggin' after this deer then. And so I kind of like get down to the one. I kind of snuck around the backside and I'm crawling my way along the side of the timber. And at that point, I got to a spot where I could get in glass to see if he was still there. And he must have went to the point and dropped down over. And the way the wind was blowing, I'm like, damn, if I go to where I wanted to go, if he were to
Yeah.
come back around, I'd be screwed. Like there
Yep.
would be no way. And but yeah, so those two deer, I didn't end up killing in Ohio. I had a chance, but I blew that one for sure, just because the way wind was and all that type of stuff. But fun hunts, I want redemption in Ohio for sure next year, and seeing how the property laid out, not my bread and butter as far as style goes, like hunting a little bit more fields and little shades of timber. Like
Yep.
I got to learn a little bit more when it comes to that type of stuff. That's for sure.
Yep. Yeah, it's that's that would be my bread and butter.
Yeah.
It's crazy that's your PA stuff. I have another good buddy, Mike, in central Pennsylvania. Him and I talk about deer all the time and what he's got going on in Pennsylvania. And it's like, man, we relate so close, but yet we're so different at the same time. It's just wild. Like
Yeah.
hunter numbers, hunter pressure, rifle seasons all align really, really similarly. But like he's sending me maps. He's like, "Where would you sit?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't, I don't
No
really
idea.
know. I'd have to maybe see this one in person." But yeah, it's funny how just the differences of deer around the country for sure.
Yeah, what's funny too about that Ohio trip, like I went what I thought would be like just primo. You know what I mean? Like I was so dead
Yep.
red, like I'm gonna kill a smack dab giant, and like I had all the confidence in the world, especially from the season that I had, and I was like, just continue to be positive. And like I said, I saw deer. Like obviously that first one was not shooting lights, but still I saw him, and it was cool to see how close I got to him and all that
Yep.
stuff. And the next morning, but then after that, man, we didn't see like my buddy Albert, he did see a little bit more of chasing, but I didn't.
Hmm.
Um and it was kind of like I wasn't disappointed by any means. I really wasn't, but I just remember texting my dad and being like, "My gosh, I thought shit would just be flying, like just
Yep.
running for their lives and just brr, brr, brr."
Yep.
And I didn't have that, which is okay. Like you know what I mean. I'm going for redemption next year. That's for dang sure.
Yep.
But I did not see a bunch of a rut action whatsoever. So that
Yeah,
was surprising.
it was similar, I would say, in Illinois for the times that I were there. That November, first couple days of November were good, and then
Yeah.
we had that heat come in, and it got really warm. It shut things down pretty hard, and then that first day of that cold front again, that like whatever date, that like 8th or 7th, that same day you're talking about probably, um, was when it was good. Was
Yeah.
when it was good again, and I think I saw like 8 bucks in one sit, and it was one deer that was that 5, 6 year old, like really really nice, you know
Yeah.
really heavy big 10 point. And then it slowed down again until that faithful 30 seconds of redemption I had. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a rough rut year, and saw the same thing out of buddies in Kentucky and Missouri, and a lot of guys that I know did killed bucks early in Missouri, and a couple guys did kill some rut bucks and some late November bucks. But yeah, that heart of that chasing stuff, I didn't think it was that great this year.
Yeah. Well, did you try anything new this year as far as like any gear goes, or even anything, even style of what you did at all in the woods this year?
Um, not a whole lot. I did hunt some different country, a different whole new state for me this year. It was a southern-ish state kind of,
Yeah.
big timber hill country. There's some water access involved with some of it. I did have to kind of learn that as I went. That was a good experience. I did spend some time in like a lockdown saddle this year.
Nice.
Um,
I love
that's
mine.
Yeah, I like it. It's the pouches on it, the yoke system, incredible.
Yeah.
Um, I find my Phantom is still probably my go-to, just
Mhm.
because I feel like I'm one with it. I don't really have the junk in the trunk that I think makes the lockdown a little bit more comfortable. So the Phantom suits me, which is great. To have both.
Yeah.
Um, but that's, as far as new gear, I don't really, I kind of stuck with tried and true stuff. I did order a new bow last week. I think
Nice.
my
What'd you go
bow's out
with?
of bucks. Hoyt RX-8.
Nice.
Um,
You
I've been a
you
Hoyt.
you had a Hoyt before too.
Yeah, so I was shooting a Ventum the last couple of years. I think I killed like $7 with the Ventum. Bunch of does, some hogs. It was a great bow.
Yeah.
I can't argue with it, but mentally I just have to check out of it and get something else just to be confident again.
Yeah.
I'm hoping I can get it here before before this Missouri trip coming up. And it'd be really good to go out there with a new one and
Yeah.
new sense of confidence for sure. But
Yeah. Hell yeah. That's awesome. Yeah, that's how my elite era was this year for me, man. It was like total confidence. I love shooting that elite arrow as that's their carbon bow. It's just I don't know. It laid the wood for me. That's all I
that's
could say.
yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm super confident. I was like, well, I know I won't be getting like, I mean, if I get another bow, I got the Kairos behind me, and that's this year's bow, and I have it set up just to shoot and do some things. But as far as a hunting bow goes, yeah, that air is going to be the one that will be going in the woods with me for the next time being for sure.
yep, yep. I've spent some time shooting both the Alpha X and the RX-8,
Yeah,
and they both are great. I'm excited to get this bow set up and see. Hopefully, Missouri pans out. I feel confident. And that's like bread and butter stuff. I can survive the cold. I'm
yeah,
not worried about that. The way the topography lays out there, it's kind of that. It's that field stuff that you're talking about.
yeah,
Let's do that. That's
yeah.
money.
I like
So
that. Well, especially too late season, man. If there's some food left over like that, that's going to be food's king.
yeah, I did talk to my buddies, both named Tyler, earlier this week, and they're like, "Yeah, dude, we got like 80 acres of standing corn on one farm, 40 acres on another," and I'm just like my head spinning just thinking about these bucks. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to get out there. I've never hunted in that area of Missouri, so this will be a little bit different. But yeah, it's gonna be fun. Man, just super excited.
So let's do a hypothetical. And it's such a broad question. So let's think of it has what you want. Let's just say that, right?
Yep,
Big or small parcels. Like if a small and a big parcel has like things that you want or that you're looking for, like when it
yep.
comes to things you like to hunt, which ones do you prefer?
That's funny that you mentioned that. We had a conversation amongst my friend group the other day in one of our group chats about would you have 1080s or 800, you
Yeah.
know? And this I regard this group as like a bunch of killers. Like
Yeah.
they throw down every year and they did again this year. And we all kind of had the same consensus that, 1080s for sure. Um, I would prefer to have, especially if you're going out of state, I would prefer to have a larger crop of deer to hunt than a singular large crop of deer, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I would rather pick apart a couple spots instead of potentially messing up one and then, it's lights out after that. So I think small parcels that I can slide in and out of over a big one.
Yeah.
That would be my game for sure.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah. That's what, man, my buddy Tim Seesaw, he takes these enormous public land locations and he breaks them down into smaller little chunks, dude, and he just rakes. I
Yep.
mean, he is just like your number 3, number 4, 5 hitter in your lineup, and he just says, "Yep, I'm going to kill here," and he hones in on those spots over time. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's not like a 1 year deal, but he'll pick that big spot and he'll break it into certain sections, like you said, where it makes it smaller, right?
Yep.
And he'll know that 40, 50, 60, 70 acre out of that thousands of acres spot. And it's just so cool. I mean, this year he killed a buck and he already killed a buck and he's filming this other buck doing like the same exact thing. And he's like, yeah, this one was bigger, but I mean,
Yep.
he still shot a beautiful, beautiful buck here in PA, but it's just so cool to see, how he gets the job done year after year, and his philosophy, how he breaks things down. Tim's a freaking killer, man.
Yeah. And when you're dialed, man, it's a good feeling that
Yeah,
when going into the timber with that confidence, like that's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. Last question. What tell me about your favorite. This is like kind of the you're gonna hear this question a lot because I like just hearing what other people cook up per se. What's your favorite venison recipe?
Oof, venison recipe. Um, I think I've got this way that I've started cooking backstrap. Real good friend, Buddy Sheffer. He taught this to me when I used to live with him back 9, 10 years ago. Um, I'll take a backstrap that's like 8 inches long, cleaned up, ready to be made. I'll season it. I typically garlic and Creole, super hot pan. Um, Flash all the sides and the ends of it in a pan, and then pull a cookie sheet out of the oven that's already hot. Put the meat onto the cookie sheet. 14 minutes in at a 400 degrees. Pull it out. Take it off the cookie sheet. Let it rest for 5 minutes, and then slice it. And it's money every single time. Like it's
Oh,
so hard to mess up. It's so easy to do, and while it's doing it, you can make all your sides and whatnot alongside of it. So it's just such an easy recipe, and it's so good, and it comes with none of the extra, you know, bullshit of like
yeah.
having to, put all these sauces and spices. All it's just, dude, it's just money every time.
Oh, that sounds
So
good. I like that. So, kind of that take home message: believe in yourself, persevere through those tough times, and really have confidence in all your stuff. Like you said, I love that you said that you tried the lockdown. You think it's a great saddle, but you love your Phantom. That what works for you. It's what fits to you. It's not like the thing about this hunting ordeal, and this is why I like doing this. And once you are able to separate things that work for you and the things where you are confident in, it may be the total freaking opposite of what I say, what Wade says. You do you and have fun doing it and experience it with friends, family, loved ones. And I promise you, you will have a time of your life doing this. And Wade, man, I appreciate you catching up and coming on here. I love doing this with you. I love just catching up, man. I really, really do. And I'm excited to see this late season redemption. And man, I can't wait to see that text when you're like, dude, look what happened.
yeah,
And I did it with my RX-8.
yeah. I hope to God we have another podcast to talk about here in a couple weeks. Yeah, like you said, I'm going to go out there and hunt with a couple buddies, and I just couldn't be more excited. So,
Yeah.
get out in the woods with your friends, please. Let's have some fun deer hunting. Deer hunting does not need to ruin lives. Let's go have fun with it, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. And if for whatever reason no good stories come out, we'll hear about them when you smash some turkeys, and we'll talk turkey hunting in the spring, man.
That sounds all right with me.
All right, everybody, go check Wade out, and I appreciate you for tuning in this week. We'll see you next week, and Antler up.